If you have visited a restroom or a hospital room recently, I'm confident that you've seen the Bemis logo or name on various products. We're very pleased to have Dick Bemis and Vesla Hoeschen here today, representing Bemis Manufacturing Company and participating in our keynote conversation. Dick Bemis is a director and past chairman and CEO of Bemis Manufacturing Company. He is a third-generation leader who joined Bemis Manufacturing in 1963 and eventually served as CEO and chairman for 33 years. Vesla Hoeschen is a fourth-generation leader who founded and led the company council at Bemis Manufacturing for nearly a decade. She served on the board of directors for 3 years before becoming chair in 2021. Vesla has studied family business best practices for nearly 2 decades through the UW-Madison Family Business Center and the Kellogg Center for Family Enterprise. In 2020, she completed the Executive MBA program at UW-Madison. Bemis Manufacturing Company is a global enterprise headquartered in Sheboygan Falls, Wisconsin. Bemis is the fourth-generation injection molding company serving consumer, commercial, medical, industrial markets, and is a leading producer of toilet seats in the world with over 1,600 employees at 6 facilities around the globe. The keynote conversation moderator is Bill Edstrom, owner of Edstrom Consulting Group, providing coaching and mentoring services to members of family businesses. In 2021, Bill acquired the long-standing Forums for Family Business from Dean Fowler. Through these forums, Bill facilitates monthly peer roundtable meetings addressing the unique challenges faced by family business members. I'd like to acknowledge and thank Dean Fowler for his help and support with this program for many years. Bill spent a significant portion of his career at Edstrom Industries, a Waterford-based company founded when he was just 10 years old. Bill, you didn't found that when you were 10, did you? But it was founded when you were 10? Operating out of the family garage initially, the business eventually achieved worldwide sales, boasting a prestigious clientele from research facilities around the globe. Bill, alongside his 3 siblings, successfully transitioned the business from the founding generation before partnering with private equity in 2015. Please help me welcome Dick Bemis, Vesla Hoeschen, and Bill Edstrom to the stage.
Thank you, Dan. I've had a really great opportunity to get more familiar with Dick, and I've known Vesla for a few years through the forum groups, and we've had a great time just getting together in preparation for this. So thank you for inviting us to this. And we want to get started with kind of learning the history and then a little bit more about the business of Bemis. So do you want to give us a little history lesson, Dick?
History goes back to a woodworking company in Sheboygan Falls. And the story is that I grew up with sawdust in my pants cuffs. So we would buy lumber, process it, and make different products. Along the way, the Kohler company was looking for a vendor for toilet seats. And we bid on the product category and were unsuccessful. So I went to a furniture company in Sheboygan that proceeded to go out of business. We got a second crack at it, and that time we were successful, and that's what really brought us into this business of making toilet seats. I joined the company in '63, right out of school. It was a pretty small company, about $3 million in revenue at the time. And as we started to look at the various product categories, we thought that we could really start to romance toilet seats. That's hard to imagine, but I've been doing it for a long time. So we redesigned the hinges, came out with new styles, and being a small player in the industry that had about 9 or 10 competitors, we started clawing some market share from each one of them. Today, we're the only producer in the United States of toilet seats. So either through acquisitions or bankruptcies or whatever, we're the sole survivor. Along the way, we got into making products for the hospital industry, single patient disposables that are suction canisters used in operating rooms, and sharps containers that are used for disposing of needles and syringes and that kind of stuff. And we also got, we bought a company called Kelch, which was up in Menominee Falls at the time. And that basically makes caps for small engines, non-automotive gas caps for small engines, and a lot of other products that manage fluid. It could be gasoline, could be oil, it could be anything else like that. So that's kind of a little bit of the history. I'm third generation. My grandfather got involved with the company, and my father, who was an attorney, joined him after the war, and then I joined him in '63.
Right, so I think that's an important kind of a framing, is that you're third generation. I mean, you joined a company that already had a history at the point that you came in. And now you're, Vesla, you are in the fourth generation of leadership. And what happens in the fourth generation is you have much more extended family, I imagine. But continue on with, and you have a few other things to present kind of in the background for this company.
Sure, just a little bit of background here. I think one of the things that we pride ourselves in at Bemis is that we have been an innovator in our industry. And so, as Dad has mentioned, we started out making wagons and furniture, and then toilet seats, and now injection molded products. And along the way, not only have our products been innovative, but then our processes. So from actually working with wood to compression molding and now into injection molding. And so it's that innovation that drives the transitions that we've been through for a number of years. And that innovation then has allowed us to expand and become the global, or a global leader. We have manufacturing facilities around the world, in Europe, in France, in Croatia, in England. We have two here in the US, here in Sheboygan Falls, as well as in North Carolina, and we have a facility down in Mexico, which, when you think about the company being founded back in 1901 on the banks of the Sheboygan River, it's pretty impressive how it's grown now and all the areas of the globe that it touches. So for those of you who haven't figured it out, it's toilet seats. That's really our bread and butter. And we sell our toilet seats through a number of different channels around the globe. We have DIY stores that we sell through, obviously online as well, and our wholesalers. And we sell under a number of different brands. Here in the US, you'd be familiar with Bemis, with Mayfair, and Church. Beyond the global toilet seats, I'm just taking all of your thunder here, Dan. We have a business unit of custom molded products where we provide innovative solutions using our expertise in both in design and in technical molding. And we have obviously served a number of different customers in that. And as Dad said, we have a line of medical products and a line of gas caps. So you can see that it's innovation and constant change that has really driven the growth of this company. But also the innovation has happened, and the company has evolved, but the family has evolved.
Before you move on, can you go back to that one? And
Yeah.
I just want to point out that these companies are largely nearby. I mean, they're not entirely, but they're largely Wisconsin-based companies. So you've kind of really set up and become a core or key regional supplier. And what these things are, having had the unique opportunity to tour the manufacturing operation last year, very large hoods, fenders, and other kinds of cladding on tractors, for example, would be the kind of the nature of those products, at least from what I observed.
Right, and obviously those products, you don't want to have to ship them thousands and thousands of miles. So what you do is you end up partnering with many of the businesses that are around here. So, as I was saying, the evolution of the business is also happens alongside the evolution of the family. And so we have moved from an owner-operator model, which is kind of that sole proprietor, that entrepreneur, into what we call a cousin consortium, which means that we have a number of avenues for my generation to be involved. So my generation currently spans the ages of 37 to 55, and we do have family in operations. We have family in governance. That's where I currently serve. There's 3 of us family members that serve on our board. Our board is a fiduciary board with 4 independents and our non-family CEO. Beyond operations and governance, we also have a standalone foundation, and we have 3 family members that are involved in that. So as the business continues to evolve, so do the opportunities for family involvement within that. And it gets pretty exciting. So what else did I want to say? I think one of the
I just want to correct you one thing. Oh. The board is a legal board. It basically manages the company.
Yeah, and I think that's an important transition. I think it's very challenging for entrepreneurs, for founders to let those reins go and actually allow the fiduciary board to take control. And I know it's had its hiccups, but it's functioned pretty well, in my opinion. I'm the chairman, remember? So.
And we're gonna get into this theme a little bit more as we move along. But I think one of the takeaways from your group and the other groups is that having a fiduciary board is not that common in a smaller company. And having a more of a formal governance setup is also not that common. Most of our businesses started from pretty humble beginnings, where governance was conversations around the dinner table. And it evolves, and there is a point in complexity and in the scale of the business. I mean, Dick, the way you started in the business is night and day difference from what it's like today. But there is a point in where more formal structures are advantageous if you want continuity, if you want to keep the business in the family.
I agree. I think that it allows, having a board and having a strong board allows this continuity, especially if there's any sort of discord in the family or any sort of transitional period, which is going to naturally cause discord. So of course we don't like to talk about when you're no longer here, but you have to in a family business. And that becomes very, very challenging. But if you have a board and a high-functioning board that allows for that continuity as there are these transitions or upsets within the family. So.
I think one of the challenges for all of us that have been very active in a private business is to turn some of the responsibilities over to a board of directors. And we had a compensation committee, and I let the board set my compensation. That's not the normally in a privately held company. You know, you really want to control your own compensation. But in this particular case, I said, I'll respect your recommendations, and it's been good because we do, comparative analysis on Edstrom. I'm no longer obviously that active in the company, but during that period of time, that was one of the things that I was willing to give up. But I also felt that if we're going to have a board of directors that are independent, they've got to come to work and know that there's going to be meaningful challenges that are going to be presented to them, that they don't come in just as kind of window dressing or something like that, that they take time out of their busy schedule. They want to know that they're providing meaningful, compensate or contribution to the company. And I think that was another thing that when we set our board up, I set out to really make it more meaningful. Our committees are very active. And a lot of the work that gets done at the board level is at the committee level. So,
And we've got 4 committees: in compensation, audit and finance, and investment, and governance. And all of those are led by independent directors with 2 or 3 other members serving on each of the committees. And as Dad said, there's a lot of work that gets done in the committees, and so all of the members are making very meaningful contributions in our board.
So as a point of education, Vesla, you listed off those committees, and those kind of parallel with what a board is for. Like in smaller businesses where, like in my background, a lot of us served on the board, and there was a hard time differentiating between the board and the executive management and the owners, because we're like all the same people in different conversations. But from your perspective of studying this stuff a lot, what would you say that you've learned about what a board should be responsible for?
I think that when we gather in the boardroom, I've explained that the shareholders will function at about 30,000 feet view. We like the board to be at about 10,000 feet, and obviously the management is boots on the ground. And my biggest challenge is having these independent directors who have led very successful careers. Some of them are ex-CEOs. This one's an ex-CEO. Having them get out of the operations and up into the strategy of where we want to go. Because they're natural problem solvers, and so you get a bunch of CEOs around the table and they just want to solve problems. So that's a little bit of a challenge. And what we've tried to do in the boardroom is move it away from just a presentation to the directors and more of a conversation. Our directors are coming in, they are a resource for our executive leadership team. And they should be asking questions back and forth and functioning at that higher level and not just being presented to and rubber stamping stuff. Really, again, it's supposed to be much more of a conversation. And that's how you extract real value out of your directors. But it's a challenge.
All right, so I'm going to get into some of my questions. And when we were talking, Dick, you said that you felt like your responsibility was to run a quarter-mile in a mile relay, kind of like your responsibility as the continuity between your generation and the previous generation. Can you explain kind of that as a value that drove you in your career?
I use the analogy of running a quarter mile of a mile relay. And I ran track when I was in high school. That's just one loop around the track, quarter mile. And being the third generation, I said I had the baton for the third portion of that relay. And it was my job to pick up the baton and pass it to the next generation ahead of the competition. So I had a quarter mile to do that, and that was kind of the analogy I used. After 35 years, I finally passed the baton on. I think that the thought was that it's not something to build and sell. It was basically build and pass on, and that's a significant difference. I felt that I was a steward. I was paranoid that it was going to fail on my watch, And I was always looking over my shoulder as to what was going to knock us off. And at the end of the day, I said I wanted to leave a company that had a strong balance sheet, that had no EP issues, that had assets, buildings, machinery, state-of-the-art, and product development, and a group of leaders that could continue into the next generation. And I feel like that was accomplished.
And if you listen carefully to what Dick just said, is he listed a bunch of values and the kind of the culture that was established in the business by you and your other family members who were participating in it. And some of those were the level of innovation. I mean, you cannot be in a company producing toilet seats for like 100 years without innovating in a variety of ways, innovating in the way that the product's manufactured, innovating in the design of it. And that's, I guess, that constant making it better, and then also designing interesting ways to go to market with multiple brands. But that type of a thing of, trying to lead, feeling paranoid, trying to create some barriers to entry for the competitors, those are some of the values that you and your generation have instilled, if I'm understanding.
I have a little anecdotal story. When I moved into our second house, my wife and I, with our second child, outgrew the cottage that we were living in. And the first thing I wanted to do was change all the toilet seats. I think there was 5 bathrooms in the house we moved into. And that was the first week. I said, we got to get rid of the toilet seats. The house had been built about 8 or 9 years prior to us moving in. And they had installed Bemis toilet seats. So I spent the better part of a weekend trying to get the damn toilet seats off the toilet. They had rusted on. And here I am, 27 years old, and I came back into the office on Monday, and I said, we got to come up with a toilet seats that's easier to change, or we're never going to sell these things. If a guy's got to know that he's going to spend hours trying to extricate the old seat before you put a fresh one on, we'll never sell these things. So we came up with a rust-proof hinge, and that was just one of the things that really kind of set us off on a new direction. But innovation has always been one of the things that we've done. We came up with a way of painting toilet seats that is different than the entire industry. We molded toilet seats different than anybody else in the industry. A lot of it was homegrown, a lot of it is tribal knowledge. We use co-injection for injection molded seats, which allows us to take a B-grade recycled material and put it into the interior core of the ring and cover of the toilet seat, and then put an A-grade over the top. And by that way, we reduce our costs, and we also environmentally consume a lot of that post-industry scrap. Our wooden toilet seats are made out of basically off-fall from window manufacturers, door manufacturers, cabinet manufacturers. We bring all that material in and grind it, make it into a flour, blend it with thermoset resin, and mold a ring and a cover that way. So it's a lot of those innovations, but most of it's homegrown.
And that type of homegrown innovation, it gives you a barrier to entry because it would take a long time for another company to develop those kinds of things. You've also really embraced technology. In touring the plant, I lost count of the number of industrial robots that are deployed in the handling of these things. And so it's a combination of the design, the process, and the materials, but along with the manufacturing efficiency. That's pretty much allowed you to keep this business in Wisconsin.
I think we're all challenged with the Chinese import. And our biggest competitor right now is coming in from China. So, and there's a variety of manufacturers over there. I've visited Chinese, I've gone through these plants, and they're abysmal. They're just, it's a pathetic excuse for manufacturing, but they got labor, and they got cheap labor. The only way to win that game is to automate the heck out of things here in the U.S. And robotics, obviously, we embraced robotics very early on, and we probably run, I don't know, 300-400 robots in our plants today. And it's designed to take the direct labor and that cost out of the product category.
And some of the innovation in injection molding is what opened the doors to be able to do other industrial or business-to-business type products in addition to the toilet seats.
Yeah, I mean, club car golf carts or John Deere tractors are what's going on in Mexico?
Polaris.
Polaris, ATVs. A lot of that cosmetic plastic on those units are all made by us, and so that's one of the reasons we have expanded so rapidly down in Mexico. We've got about 400 employees down in Monterey right now, and we just built quite an addition on so we can accommodate more growth down there.
It's the sleep number beds. Everybody should buy a sleep number bed.
Vesla, I want to get into your career a little bit because I would say that it's an alternative career in family business, but you're also entering a business of significant size and scale and complexity. So you have spent the last decades becoming an expert and educating yourself in everything to do with family business governance. So tell us about that journey.
So,
And
yep, okay.
Okay.
I moved to Madison like in 2001, and Madison has a fabulous family business center there with a speaker series, a monthly speaker series, and started attending those. And the monthly conversation helps to keep best practices kind of at the forefront of your mind. You're never allowed to stray too far when you have, this constant stream of what should the best practices be in family business. And I found that fascinating and attended many of those over the years. I've also attended intensive week-long programs at Kellogg, which are also fabulous, and our executive leadership team has attended those with some family and with some of our board members. And those are transformative experiences, especially after hours, because there's a lot of good knowledge transfer after hours during the socializing from one family business to another, as well as great relationship building. But I think that coupled with, forum groups and, the articles and everything that is available really just keeps the conversation going. It's very easy to put governance on the back burner. There's always going to be something more pressing. The supply chain issues, market share degradation, just meeting customer orders. There's always going to be something more pressing than good governance. And so knowing that, there was a little bit of a void that I stepped into. That was going to be my focus and my area that I truly chose to study, and that's the track that I took. So.
And I guess a little conversation about what it even is, because that's one of the reasons that I've attended this specific event in the past, is to try to learn what these things even are, because as you're growing your business, you don't have any of this stuff set up. But part of governance is related to the board of directors, but there's other elements to it. Can you just briefly state in your opinion?
I have a slide for that. I think we're all familiar with Oh, where did it go? Ta-da. We're all familiar with John Davies' three-circle model, and if you're not, this is a great starting point. It talks about the intersection between family and the business and the owners. And it helps to provide a good framework to understand where do you exist and at what part of the circle are you in. What this doesn't do, this is a very stagnant model, and it's kind of a very ideal way of looking at things, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't really address the evolution of a family business. And so when you think, of the owner-operator, the entrepreneur, the founder, this is where the circles are. They're all on top of one another. It's one person calling the shots, one person setting the strategy, one person making all the decisions. And where good governance comes in is this pulling apart of the circles, these transitions, and that's where the work really gets done. And that's the hard work that needs to be done so that you can have successful transitions. You can have multiple generations working in the business. So I just, that's just one of the things that I think, when you're looking at best practices, you have to consider not only the framework. On top of this, though, is the life stages of the actual individual family. So are you talking about school-age children? Are you talking about college kids where it's very natural for them to be pulling away from the family? Are you talking about newlyweds or new parents where it's more common to kind of reconnect with the senior generation? And that is very hard to layer on top of this. But what that always makes me think of is that a family business is this very complex living organism. And there's no one easy way to look at it, to define it. It's always in flux. And while the three-circle model is lovely, it's very stagnant. And you have to remind yourself that it's ever-changing and ever-evolving. And that's what I just find fascinating. It's the beauty of the family business, the complexity of the family business as well.
If you, go ahead.
I'd just like to add, it's very unusual for a company that's celebrating 122 years to have a small ownership group. As time goes on, companies get split up and they get passed on to another generation. And in our particular case, we went through several different iterations of redeeming and reducing the number of owners, or basically what I call pruning the tree. And I think that that's one of the reasons why companies are able to survive into the fourth or fifth generation, is the ownership group is a fairly concentrated group in our particular case. And when I joined the company, there were 3 families involved. It got down to 1 family, and then eventually that 1 family, it just became the 2 of us, my brother and I. It took capital in order to execute those purchases, but at the end of the day, I think it gave us another 50 years of life as a private company. Working with that smaller group is a little easier. Everybody in this room has got their own set of circumstances and their own family dynamics, and you have to play the cards that you're dealt. I was able to modify the deck a little bit as we went along, but it was an important thing to have.
Yeah, that's an extremely important point, is that idea of pruning the tree, of reducing the number of owners, can simplify. It also reduces the number of extended owners that have no engagement in the company. And it's not even necessarily a good investment for an extended group of owners that have a minority stake. Your governance structure, though, as you're moving forward with a lot more owners, Can you speak to that a little bit, Vesla?
Well, absolutely. I think that I am one of 6 kids. I have 3 sisters. We witnessed the pruning of the tree, which was the sisters were bought out, and dad's sisters. And we kind of decided, well, I don't think we really want that to happen. And because of that, it takes this effort to create a working cousin consortium. It is essentially going from a monarchy to a democracy. And it's not easy. But we meet, and we have a family council, and we get together and we try to keep if there's family discord, we try to keep that in the family council and come up with kind of the family message. So we have, we've come up with family values and an employment policy and other policies and procedures within that family council so that the cousins all have a voice. And while no one has the ultimate control, they have a voice and they have a vote. And it's not easy, and it's definitely not perfect, but that's what we're working toward, and that's what we're committed to doing. Oh, we created a shadow board as well, so that we do have an opportunity for board members, or for the next generation members, to attend board meetings and train for becoming a board member. The foundation, so we have a standalone foundation as well. As I said, that's another avenue for our next generation to be involved in. And we have to work, obviously, to figure out where we're going to distribute funds. So it's all about, it's no longer one person calling the shots. And like I said, it's messy, but it's working right now.
So I'm going to ask you one of the questions from the audience is how were you chosen as board chair? Like, what was your path to the...
So my path was a little bit circuitous because I didn't grow up working in the business. I had a sales position for a little while. But again, my track was really focusing on the family governance side of things. And by doing that, I recognized that we really needed to work as a cousin group. And therefore, I started the family council, and we met for a number of years, and I led that. And in doing so, kind of proved my mettle, and then was elected to the board. So, mic up. My dad's telling me what to do. That never happens.
Not always.
So that was, again, the issue with governance is that it doesn't necessarily, it can't be measured on the bottom line. And so I don't have any line item on the P&L, but yet we all know that it has to be focused on, it has to be done in order to have a legacy, to have a next generation, and to have a company that is going to go on for another 100 years. So that was my track.
Right, and it's a challenge within those circles to, find your spot. And coming from a family business, you do wind up as an employee often initially, or you wind up in one of these other roles, and clarifying those roles and creating those opportunities. You will need to look forward to your generation. What generation are you, Vesla?
4.
Your generation 4. So how do people prepare the next generation? You're not ready to retire anytime soon, but you have some children, and there's a lot more in the greater family structure. How do you prepare that next generation?
Great question. We are, as the cousin group, we have decided that we would like to see our children have these opportunities and be owners going forward. We have to kind of relearn our behavior because, of course, our models were, the sibling group that made and called all the shots and everything. And so, again, we have to change our behavior, relearn some new behavior. And we're trying to set up a structure so that the next generation can come in, whether they come in through internships and summer jobs, or whether they look more towards the governance track, or whether they're going to work with the foundation. We want to keep these avenues open. So it requires training. We've had next generation picnics, and we've taken the kids through the factory, and they're fascinated by the robots. We try to keep them involved and really understanding the products that we make. We have held trivia contests, things like that. So they're fairly young. I think you saw on the slide that they're 2 to 19 at this time. And we're giving them the space to find their own footing in life. There's no mandate that they have to come back to the business. But we want to leave those opportunities and those doors open for them.
I think the further you get away from the founding generation, the harder it is to retain an understanding what the company is, what the values are, and what the history of, how it came to be. So if you're working in the business, all those years, you were closer to it. You were still, a couple of generations away from the founding, but basically your kids are much further from that, and that's where you can have a sense of loss of the culture and the values and things. So you have to take, not you have to, but it's a good idea to take the initiative to pass that along. So I haven't, go ahead.
Just to add to that, one of our children lives in Wyoming, and we've got 3 lovely grandkids out there. They don't visit that often, but when they do come, and if she brings her children along, one of her requests is to go through the factory and introduce the kids from Wyoming to what the factory is. And they're fascinated by the robots, the busyness, watching products being made. So that's one of the other ways of getting them engaged and making sure that they appreciate the asset that they've got, because basically the 4th generation owns the company. I don't own the company. So that's gone a long way away.
So I got a question asking about the differences between generations. How do you deal with the differences between generations? And I want to spin that a little differently and ask you about the father-daughter dynamic that exists in your 2 working relationship.
Well, first of all, I had admiration for Vesla. What she's been able to accomplish is something that I probably was incapable of doing. My brother and I had a very difficult relationship, and that got passed on to the next generation. And knitting that back together was a real challenge. And I think we've made tremendous progress, and I think we've still got a ways to go. But by demonstrating the importance of having both families come back together and work together for the future of the company was what she set out to do and was able to accomplish. That, I think, gave me confidence that she was also capable of a hell of a lot more. Joined the board, and at that time I was not chairman of the board. We had an outside board member, or I don't know, Jeff. You were chairman of the board. Oh, okay. Jeff is our CEO right here. Thank you for coming, by the way, and listening to the stories. Thus I joined the board, and within a couple of years it became evident that a family member as a chair of the board was very important for the continuity and the longevity of the company. And she was the right person in the right place at the time.
I'll add that I think father-daughter relationships are different than father-son relationships. I'm less of a threat I guess, to my dad. And I know that, especially in our forum group, there is a lot of next generation sons that are really, really struggling with the relationships with their father. And it's heartbreaking to watch, and I'm sure that some of you are experiencing this now. But thankfully that wasn't necessarily the case between Dad and I, and so it just made our working relationship that much easier. It just allowed us to really bounce ideas off one another and have conversations. Again, I wasn't trying to kick him out, and he's still such an asset, and so we try to meet on a regular basis and have him unload information. I'm still so impressed with how much he knows. I'll never know that. Like, I can never fill his shoes. I'm okay with that because we have teams of people that are trying to fill his shoes, and that's going to be a better model going forward.
Well, thank you very much. And you brought a few guests today. If you want to mention who you brought along to listen.
We have our support team. My mother is here, who has been supportive for, how many years have you guys been married? Oh,
57.
Sorry, I shouldn't have asked that. I really
I
put
knew
him on
that,
the spot.
honey.
He knew that. We all knew that. I have my brother here, Jason, and my other brother, Austin. I have my husband here supporting me. Thank you very much, Kenny. We have Jeff Lonegro, our non-family CEO, and Subhash Anbu, who is our VP of IT. So.
Well, thank you very much. I would say that I've had a great time just in preparing for this. It's been inspiring to see the way you interact and learn more about your company and you as individuals. So with that, I think we're ready to
Well, thank you very much
Move
for
along.
giving us the opportunity.